I'm Tracy Osborne, and you're listening to the Daring Woman podcast. Imagine the story of a generation being altered by women who were empowered to live their truth and in turn can empower others to live theirs. It's time to rewrite the narrative. You know, they say stress is one of the number one causes of disease and death and chaos and disorder in our lives. And you know, they're not kidding. When you're super stressed out, it really takes a toll on every aspect of your life. And not only stress, but fear, anxiety, depression, all of these non-positive emotions and feelings really become toxic to our bodies. My 16-year-old daughter is special needs, and she suffers from anxiety, and she has a phobia of vomiting. And anytime she begins to feel anxious, she begins to feel nauseous, which of course triggers her phobia. And needless to say, she doesn't go to school very often. And we actually have to have teachers come home and work with her because of all of this. It's really debilitating. And it's just so harmful. And joining me today is Dr. Katie Nall. We're going to talk about, not only how stress and fear and anxiety really affect our lives, but she's going to teach us a method of coping and healing that is really fast becoming incredibly popular. So, Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tracy. It is my honor and pleasure to be your guest today.
Well, I'm excited to have you here and to talk to you about what we're talking about is EFT, or emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as tapping. And it's been around forever, but it's really, I think, over the past probably 5 or 6 years, really gotten popular as people find out that, oh my God, it sounds weird, it looks weird, but it works. So we're definitely going to dive into that today. But let's first start with who are you? Give us some of your backstory and tell us how you got into EFT and all that.
Well, Tracy, when you think about stress and anxiety, what subject usually comes up? Math. So I am a mathematician, and late in life, I got the opportunity to complete a life dream, which was to start and finish my PhD in mathematics education. And I wanted to work specifically with college students who only needed math classes to complete their degree. At the time, I was working at a college, and I met student after student after student who would come in carrying this badge of honor saying, "I hate math," which of course felt like a dagger straight to my heart.
Oh, sure.
And I wanted to help these students, but just even talking to them about math, they would have such strong physical reactions. I mean, watch from the bottom of their neck, crawling all the way up to the top of their forehead. Their color would change. They usually would start to become pink or red. They could water the plants in my office by rubbing their hands together with all the sweat coming off their
Oh my goodness.
And you mentioned your daughter's nausea. People would become nauseous just talking about math, not even being in the class, just telling them they had to take the class. And I thought, how could they say this about the subject I love?
Right? I love math.
Yeah, well, who doesn't?
Well, but I think we're in the minority here.
I'm just so afraid that you're right, Tracy. I thought I really wanted to help these students. So I started doing research, and I looked for how to reduce stress and anxiety in math. And I researched, I was working on my dissertation, so I went through all the journals, I went through all the articles, all the publications, and I found nothing. There was nothing to help reduce stress and anxiety about math. What everything said was, you need to study harder, you need to get a different teacher, you need to form study groups. And I'm thinking I can't even get these kids to register for class. So
Right.
I can't get them. I can't even get them to that point. So I dropped the part about math, and I said, what can I do to reduce stress and anxiety? And that's when I found Nick Ortner's EFT Universe. And it
Mm-hmm.
happened to be, I found it right at the beginning, and I listened every day. Every day he has a different speaker. He offers this every year. And that was 9 years ago. And I thought, well, I haven't found anything else. We'll just try this. So I got online and bought the book and bought the DVD and taught myself. And I ended up talking to students that had no other recourse, and they were desperate. And oh, Tracy, I love people who are desperate because they're willing to try anything, right?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. So they come in my office and I said, hey, I have no idea if this works or not, but let's try it. And they're like, yes, let's try it. So we would start, and after a few weeks, they'd come back and they'd say, Dr. Nall, I am passing math. And they were more surprised than I was. Students were coming in and getting A's in math. And I actually had Scott, who came into my office, looming in the doorway. And he started off with Dr. Nall. And I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on now? He said, and he came closer and he gives me a big bear hug. And he says, if it hadn't been for that voodoo stuff you taught me, I never would have gotten my bachelor's degree. So I thought, maybe there's something to this. So Tracy, I went back and I got my certification. And it turns out for 2 years, I had no flippin' idea what I was doing. But enough of it was being effective that it really worked with that. So now that I'm a certified practitioner and finishing up my level on to be able to train others in this, I'm so excited about what it has to offer. I still do adjunct math teaching, and when I do, I teach them tapping, and the ones that are open to it do much better, but not everybody's open to something different.
Yeah, and for those who are listening who've never heard of EFT or tapping, it's when you look in the mirror and you do that whole I'm beautiful, I love you, and you're like, I feel like an idiot. Well, when you first start doing tapping, pretty much the same thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I hope nobody sees me because they're gonna think I'm weird tapping around my face.
Mm-hmm.
But it does. It totally works.
Mm-hmm.
I've tapped my way out of cravings, out of headaches, out of stress. I mean, it even just the just doing the chop on the hands.
Right.
If I'm around people and I can't really do a full tapping, just doing the chop on the hands will reduce stress levels.
Right.
And it's so important, because like we talked about, stress and anxiety and fear are debilitating.
Mm-hmm. They actually, Tracy, can be directly related to the top 6 causes of death.
Yeah.
And they are the cause of 80% of medical visits. So I know a lot of people are worried about healthcare in America, and there's a lot of talk about universal healthcare, but really, once we can learn to manage stress, that would make a huge impact on our health community.
Oh, for sure. I mean, not only is it just, it's poison in your blood system and in your body, but what do you do when you're stressed? You eat more, you eat bad, you play couch potato, and you overwork yourself. It causes heart attacks. I mean, it's just, stress is a killer. It really, really is. And I know when I stopped taking care of myself and I let stress take control, I end up down. Back in October, as a matter of fact, it happened, and I went into almost full-blown adrenal fatigue.
Oh.
I was down.
Wow.
And so it does. It really, really affects everything you do.
And Tracy, in order to help those people that aren't really open to it, there's been a ton of research in the past 30 years since the time that Gary Craig developed tapping. And he was an electrical engineer who's trained at Stanford University. And he saw the benefits of these meridians, which is what acupuncture and acupressure use.
Right.
As an electrical engineer, he kind of looked at everybody and he said, wow, these look like these could connect. And that's how he was able to identify these few points on your body that you tap: the top of your head by your crown, the edge of your eyebrow above your nose, the side of your eye, under your eye, under your nose, under your lips, right above your chin, and then using both hands on your collarbone, and then about 4 inches under your underarm to tap there. And you mentioned on the side of the hand to start as well.
Right.
Those simple points hit about 98% of the same kind of points that you would get in an acupuncture session. But here's the part, and this is funny, Tracy. When I first got started, of course, my guinea pig was my husband, right? And we sat down on the couch, and I said, okay, now you got to tell me what you have fear about. He looked sideways out of the corner of his eyes and said, what? I said, so what are you upset about? And he said, well, everything's great. I said, no, it's not great. I know you're upset about something. Tell me. He's like, for 30 years, you've been telling me to talk positive. And I said, yes, and it hasn't worked. So now, now we're going to have to really identify the negative. And Tracy, that's what a lot of people fight. They don't want to say the part about, I have this fear that I might be failing, or I have this fear of success, or I'm really scared of going into this math class. They don't want to say that because our culture has been telling them, be positive, move forward, you can do this. And, you can say that to yourself all you want, but there's a little voice in the back of your head, and it's whispering very loudly, and it's saying, who do you think you are? You can't do this. And all that negative talk, right? And if we don't address it, that stuff keeps going and growing and getting louder and louder and louder until that's all we can hear. And so that's the beauty of tapping, is it allows you to take that little tiny negative voice in the back of your head and say, you know what, I hear you, and I'm going to address you, and I'm going to show you that you're wrong. The research that they've done has been amazing. Dr. Peter Stapleton in Brisbane, Australia, has been doing lots of research at Bond University, where she works. And they've actually, tapping has recently been approved by the Veterans Administration for use in post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, yeah.
The state of Florida is actually has 2 bills, one on the House side and one on the Senate side, to allow alternative treatment, because they're starting to recognize how effective it is and actually how much less money it's costing the state. Gary Craig went into veterans hospitals and took Vietnam vets. I'm talking about Vietnam, Tracy. These people, these soldiers, these Marines, these Navies, all of these service people had been hospitalized and drugged for over 40 years. And that's at the expense of the government, which is what it should be, right? But he would go in, and in 1 week of concentrated tapping, those service personnel could walk out of the door as a healthy human being. Now that's effective. So for the Veterans Administration to approve it, and there's going to be a chapter in one of the next releases of the American Psychology Association that is allowing it as well.
Wow, that's amazing. My uncle is a Vietnam vet, and we've never talked about it, but I know it messed him up, along with many, 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 many people. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so I mean, that's incredible for the Veterans Association to recognize something non-traditional, non-Western to help with the psychiatric help. That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Yeah. Now I have clients all over the world. I live in Central Florida, so obviously, I work with people here,
Sure.
but because I can use Zoom or even the telephone, I have clients that I work with on grief of losing a mate, on and of course I help students. I had one student. I'll share one story with you that she's given me permission to share. I had a high school student who had taken the SAT, the one of the entrance exams for college applications, and she took it and she did really well, but she felt like she could do better. So she studied really, really hard and took the test a second time and her scores were lower. She was devastated. And so she reached out to me and we had 3 sessions. And just because of her schedule and things that were going on, between the time of her second attempt and her third attempt, she had no time to study whatsoever. I followed up with her after her third attempt to ask her what happened. Her score went up 90 points. 90 points, Tracy. That's like a whole different level of schooling that she'd be eligible for.
Right.
Yeah. There are schools and companies that have adopted tapping for a culture-wide effect. Pacific Grove Middle School in Pacific Grove, California does 6 minutes of tapping for everybody. The students, the faculty, the staff, everybody does 6 minutes of tapping just to kind of regulate. And they've been doing this now for a few years, and they've found that test scores have gone up, behavior issues have gone down. Special needs students have found to have greater behavioral control. Every indicator that you can think of has improved just by 6 minutes. Is that crazy?
That's amazing. And I can't believe I've never tried this with my child, but she's one of those, she can look at me like, seriously, I'm 16, you want me to do what?
Well,
you know,
doing it with family is different, because there's all of those issues. But I would love to work with your daughter if she would like to check it out. If she wants to, she can watch. I was able to do a TEDx talk on this. So she goes to YouTube and searches out TEDx math anxiety. She'll see my TEDx talk and she'll get a better idea of what I do and who I am. And I'd love to help her.
Yeah. We'll definitely, talk about that and I'll share that video with her. So, in your studies and such, I know we've talked a little bit about, the anxiety and all of that and just seeing what somebody's face looks like when all of a sudden they're faced with math, and you'd think that you'd ask them to do public speaking, for crying out loud. But I just don't get it, because I love math. And that was one of the things. I have, a couple of my kids weren't good in math, and I was the worst person to try and teach them, because I'm like, how do you not understand this? It's so freaking easy. You just subtract this, multiply this, and bam, there's your y, and they're just like looking at me like I'm speaking Greek. But so what have you found, like, with your clients? I'm sure you get on and you have a client who is just absolutely completely stressed and to the max. What happens after a session?
So that's really interesting that you asked that question, Tracy. I'm thinking in particular, one of my math students, she would come crying to my office, once a week about her math assignments. And I would say to her, well, would you like to tap? No, I'm not going to tap. I'm just going to get this. And it's the last class I need to graduate. She would cry. And we would do this week after week after week. Well, now it's the last week of class and she is not passing anything.
Yeah.
So she's in my favorite state, Tracy.
Yeah, desperate.
So she's desperate. And I said, okay, look, you don't have anything to lose at this point. Let's just try it. So she's crying in my office while we're tapping together, and I repeat back to them what they say. So I start at the top of the head and say, I hate math, I hate math, I hate math. And we go through that a whole round. Well, all of a sudden, and you ask, how they look, all of a sudden her shoulders go down. I can see her neck is going up. It's not as tight. And she stopped crying. And of course, I asked her how she's doing. She's like, I'm fine, but I still hate math. I said, okay, that's fine. So we do a few more rounds. Well, so a lot of the techniques that I learned as a certified practitioner that are not readily available through the book and the video, we finally got to the point that what was really frustrating her was the fact that her mother was living with her and bossing her around and treating her like a child. Now, this was a 45-year-old woman. And so
been there, done that.
Yeah. So we tapped on how she felt about all of that. Well, talk about a physical difference, Tracy. I mean, she started sitting up straighter. She was doing deeper breaths before. She was doing shallow breaths, right at her chest level. Her shoulders went down even more. She just became more relaxed. And it's funny because after you do a changing round like that, they kind of don't look at you because they're like, it's almost like they're trying to regroup and trying to assimilate what happened. In fact, many of my clients, will look away for a while and then they look up at me and they go, what just happened? And I'll say, I don't know, but I know whatever happened worked. And right. She got all finished. She calmed down. She got everything done. And she said, you know what? I know I can do this. And I looked at her and I said, you're right. I know you can do this too. She left my office and in less than a week, she finished a semester's worth of work.
Wow.
And she passed.
That's awesome. I think a lot of times we just get into our own heads and we convince ourselves, I hate math. I can't lose weight. I can't do this. And we tell ourselves that so many times over and over and over and over and over again that, it becomes our reality. It becomes our truth. And when we can release that, it's amazing what actually can happen.
Yeah. And it's not only what we tell ourselves, but it's also what other people have told us.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the part that's interesting, Tracy, and I love this example, is that if you and I were in a building and it caught fire today, you and I would know what to do. First of all, we'd get the heck out of there, and then we'd call 911, right? If we were 15 years old and we were in a building together, we'd probably do the same thing. If we were 10 years old and that happened, we would probably be smart enough to get out. We may or may not know to call 911. If we were 5 years old in that same situation, we may or may not know what to do.
Yeah.
What if you were 5 months old and you were laying on the floor and the building caught on fire?
Right.
You and I would not know what to do. So there are things that happened not only when we knew what happened, when we knew what to do, but things that happened before we had the skill set to know how to handle trauma or difficult or uncomfortable situations. So what happens is our amygdala, our lizard brain that keeps us alive, says to us, oh, you were in that situation before. I recognize this situation and I'm going to keep you out of that situation to keep you safe. So you may have had a situation in second grade where you saw another student embarrassed by their answer in math. And your amygdala says, I'm registering that. We're not doing this anymore, right? And you may or may not remember it, but your amygdala does. And so tapping allows your amygdala, it allows you to go back to your amygdala in a way. This is the way I can understand it anyway, where you go back and say to your amygdala, thank you for keeping me in a survival mode. I now have skills that allow me to be successful in that same situation. So you can be released from protecting me. And it just kind of melts all of those fears and anxieties and allows you to cognitively think, because we all know people who want to quit smoking and they know all the reasons why they should quit smoking and they want to quit smoking and yet they cannot. And it's because there's something in their amygdala that says, when I have this cigarette, I feel calm. And, who knows? And everybody's situation is different. They're all different. So scripts are kind of fun to play with, but they're not as effective as working specifically with an individual on a specific issue.
Wow. It's just so, it really is mind-blowing stuff that just, tapping on some certain points on your head and, on your body and stating some phrases and then restating those phrases and restating those phrases again, how it just really changes your life.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It really is.
I love
This
it.
has been awesome. And I love this topic, and I'm so glad that you came on and refreshed me about it, because I get so busy and wrapped up in my own life that I forget that help is just a tap away.
Oh, I like that phrase. I may be stealing that, Tracy.
I'm actually thinking that's what we're going to call this episode. So definitely feel free to steal it. Help is just a tap away. How can we find you?
So Tracy, people can call me, and
Okay.
if I don't pick it up, they can go to voicemail. My phone number is 772-480-0541. Again, that number is 772-480-0541. They can look at my TEDx video. It's in YouTube.
Okay.
My website is my last name, Nall, Nall, followed by the word edge, EDGE, followed by CO.com. So it's www.knowledgeco.com. Knowledge, get it?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
When I first saw your website, I thought, oh, that's an awesome play on her name.
And they can email me as well. My email
Perfect.
address is Dr. Nall speaks, SPEAKS @gmail.com. So Dr. Nall speaks @gmail.com.
Perfect. And if you're listening to this on the website, all of that stuff is below the audio here. So you can just click on all those links and everything. Well, thank you again so much for coming on and talking to us a little bit about this and how we can, release some of our stress and anxiety, and love math again for those of us who don't. Yeah. But I've really enjoyed talking with you.
I did too. Thank you so much, Tracy. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. And listeners, as always, thank you for joining in. I hope you've learned something with this episode. This has definitely been a really informative one. And we'll talk to you next week on the show.